Welcome to Win the Day from Back to the Bible. I'm your coach, Pastor Nat, and today we're going to talk about how God turns evil into good. Have you ever questioned God's control in your life? The things happening around you make you think, God, are you there? If so, what on earth are you doing? I have wrestled with this many times. But I'll tell you, time and time again, I see how God is turning an evil situation into good. Today, we will see this play out in the book of John. Here's what John records beginning in John chapter 18, verse 28. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. So Pilate went outside to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered him, "If this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." The Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken, to show by what kind of death he was going to die. It's clear that the trials of Jesus are the world's most egregious failures of justice. And we're seeing a lot in our modern time, I get it. But nothing will ever compare to what Jesus experiences here. I mean, think about it. Here Jesus was the friend of sinners, and yet now he is hated by them. He is the divine judge, and yet he is subjected to the injustice of corrupt judges. And here we find Jesus before Pilate. Now, John does not record the second and third phases of Jesus' religious trial. The Sanhedrin had declared that Jesus must die. So here he's been delivered to Pilate for the execution. The Jews had no power to sentence him to death. Now that Jerusalem was under Roman rule, they lost the ability to do so. They had no authority. That must come from Rome. Funny enough, you may have noticed that they were concerned about defiling themselves by a dead body before the Passover meal. But accusing, abusing, and condemning an innocent man to die was not a defilement. They were really messed up. That is hypocrisy and spiritual blindness at its finest. Now, Pilate was no fan of the Jews. Their request was an annoyance for sure. Pilate had continued to offend the Jewish people many times, but the Jews had to work the system no matter how much they disliked Pilate and how much he disliked them. So Pilate asks, "Okay, what's the charge?" And instead of providing the accusation, they simply say, "Hey, if he wasn't guilty, why would we be here?" You see, there was no answer, just linguistic games. Now, Pilate may not have wanted to deal with it, but he is in a predicament. They allegedly have tried Jesus and found him guilty. So it's up to Pilate to carry out the punishment. But don't miss what John said in verse 32. He said, "This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken, to show by what kind of death he was going to die." Everything that was happening was under design and God's control. It's incredible. Jesus had predicted 3 times in the book of John that he would be lifted up for his death. This was a preview of his coming crucifixion. If the Jews had stoned him, yes, he would have died, but not as he predicted. You see, God is in control of everything. This here is a true picture of God working out evil for good. Now, how about you? How has your life seemed out of control, but God was actually working it out for good? Have you ever faced injustice or a trial that God used to bring him glory and to bless you through it? If you have experienced this, please put it in the comments below. We want to know. Truly, the events we are witnessing here are horrific and they are wrong, but they were necessary. so that we might become the children of God. Friend, God is in control. My prayer is that we see it and believe it.